I wasn't in the National Theatre, although Olivier had asked me a couple of times, and I don't know why it never happened really, but I was at the Royal Court and I was filming and I was doing a lot of things in those days. But anyway, Robert Stevens had played Vershinin in their first production and had been taken ill and couldn't do either the last leg of the tour and also the film. And he asked me to take over from Robert Stevens, so that's how I came to be in it. And I got that and Alan Bates. Because I wasn't really, strictly speaking, a member of the National Theatre. And so he devised that way of billing me. It looks a little bit odd, I know, but because nobody could possibly be expected to know that. But anyway, I did a week out in Brighton, and I did the rehearsals. I did a week in Brighton. And it was really just thinking about the film mostly, because the play had virtually been done. It had been done on stage. So I came to it as a film. They were a company, they were an established company, and I had to join them. And it's always very difficult to take over from somebody. They were all totally certain of themselves on stage. I was the one who had to fit in. I was the one who had to sort of just work out exactly who was there and how to make sense of myself without having grown into it with them. But when it came to filming it, they were at as much of a disadvantage, if you can call it a disadvantage, as I was, because they were having to rethink, they were having to regroup and re-emphasize, re-gauge the levels of their performances and the intimacy of the camera to get used to that. So we were all doing the same thing. By the time we came to film it, I didn't feel divorced from them at all.
Colonel Vershinin, my compliments. Vershinin, how very glad I am to be here with you at last. Just look at you all. Hi.
Please sit down, we're delighted.
How glad I am, how glad. But there were 3 of you. I remember so well 3 girls. I don't remember the faces, but I know that your father, Colonel Prozorov, had 3 young girls.
We became a group very quickly. I mean, it was a wonderful company. And I think Olivier's 12 years at the National Theatre, I think it was 12, were almost the most exciting, the most consistently sort of triumphant years that anyone's ever had running a theatre. I mean, it never seemed, nothing ever, I went to almost everything, and everything was terrific. Nothing ever seemed to really be a disaster there. It was a golden age. So I was very glad to come in on the end of it, albeit in a film. That film probably was part of his last great era, his energies. He was recording the play. I think all plays should be filmed. I think we should forget about this division of cinema and theatre. I think any sort of great production should be filmed, just for the future, if for nothing else. And he did. I don't know whether he made a virtue of it. I mean, cinema buffs probably don't like that fact that it has a theatrical constraint on it. But Chekhov is notoriously difficult to do on film. And I don't know quite why that is. Nobody's really cracked that. I think Michael Kakianis did come very close to it with The Cherry Orchard, which I did with Charlotte Rampling 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. So I think for Olivier to do it in the way that it had been successful made a lot of sense. Vershinin is this figure who almost becomes a fantasy, a mirage for the 3 sisters, and particularly, of course, for Marcia, who falls in love with him.
I was only 18 when I was married.
And he plays up to that, not maliciously, he's just someone who lives out an idea of himself, or someone else's idea of him. It's a strain. He's almost like drifting through life and letting it all happen to him. And he plays the role that circumstances give him. And I think that's the difficulty of playing him, and also the sort of mystery of it, and the ambiguity of him. You know, it's a very, you can't quite get him, you can't quite catch him, you know.
There's more light here.
I love. I love. I love. I love your eyes, the way you move, which I see in my dreams. A wonderful, remarkable woman.
When you say such things to me, I can't help laughing. I don't know why.
I think we were both in tune and in sympathy with what we were doing and with what we both brought to it. Of course, the three sisters are just waiting for the world to open. You know, they're waiting to the dream of something beyond their lives. And Marcia, of course, thinks with him that she's found it. And she hasn't. It's a wonderful account of people's lives and of them trying to intermingle and trying to fulfill each other's and dreams and being disappointed, and the yearning for a much fuller experience of life.
Your influence will remain. After you, there will appear perhaps 6 people like you, then 12, and so on, until at last people like you will become the majority. In 200 or 300 years, life on this earth will be unbelievably beautiful. Wonderful.
Shooting periods had got fairly short by that time. I think it was shot fairly quickly. It could have been 6 or 8 weeks, I suppose, which even that's long compared to some shoots today. I remember doing Far From the Madding Crowd, and we shot it for 6 months. Well, I mean, you can't. People don't do that now. You can't do that. Certainly not outside America. He was wonderfully alive and challenging, really. He came up to me, he was hugely encouraging, and he came up to me one day and said, "Oh, I've just seen the rushes of something." He said, "It was absolutely terrific. You've got to see it." And I went to see it, and I didn't think it was very good. And I didn't quite know how to tell him, you see. And I said to Joan, I said, "That's not very good, Dad. I don't think I've done that very well at all. Why does he like it?" And so she obviously told him, and he came up to me with this glazed expression and said, "I hear you don't think it was very good," you know, looking at me in this sort of glassy eye. And I said, "Well, I didn't. I thought I really ought to have done that a bit better." Oh, walked away. You know, was obviously hugely disappointed that I hadn't liked it, or annoyed, probably more than disappointed. And then suddenly, at the end of a following week, without any warning, he said, "Right, now, everyone, we're going to reshoot that scene of Alan's that he didn't like in Russia, so would you all turn around, please, quickly? We've got about 20 minutes. You know, he suddenly threw this at me. And so I did it again. You know, it was kind of wicked and wonderful of him at the same time, and I think he had very much a touch of both those elements. You know, he was very exciting to work with, but he really could sort of whip you along a bit, you know, and I mean, he hadn't warned me that it was coming, but so I suddenly had to do it, and I felt I'd sort of challenged his judgment. You know, all I'd been was slightly disappointed in myself, really, but I think he took it the other way. I mean, I think he had a terrific admiration for her work in that. He was wonderful to the actors. Actors loved him.
I really must go now.
Here she is.
I've come to say goodbye.
Simon Gray had written this play, it wasn't his first play, of course, but he'd asked Harold Pinter to direct it. And Harold Pinter, who of course I'd worked with in The Caretaker, gave it to me, wanted me to do it. And I presume Simon Gray also thought that was a good idea. And that's how it came to me.
Is that question sufficiently unrhetorical?
Because I didn't think it was my business.
Not your business. And how many personalities and dramas over which we have gossiped and whinnied in the past few years have been our business? There have been some pretty sticky silences between us recently. And here you were, my dear, in possession of a piece of information that was guaranteed to raise, at the very least, an amused eyebrow.
All right, because I'm a coward, that's why I'm sorry. I am sorry in point of fact.
Matters of fact and points of fact have been cluttering your syntax ever since you started going steady with that butcher's boy.
I did love it from the start. I mean, the language, Simon Gray's language, is just absolutely wonderful to say. He is completely articulate, wonderfully funny, mischievous. It has so many qualities that an actor loves to just deliver. It's a great character, it's a great part. This man who's literally on a self-destruct, but in a brilliant way, so that you are absolutely fascinated by this man who is just really sort of crumbling in front of you, you know, and destroying everything around him, every relationship. And it's a wonderful observation of that. Simon was a lecturer, like Ben Butley is a lecturer. And if that is some version of his experience, which it must be, I suppose, of his life as a lecturer, then that obviously is one of the things that gives the play its power, because it's so rooted. Whether Simon is Ben Butley, I don't know.
Well, now, this is almost as delightful as it is unexpected. To what is it owed?
I came to find out whether you wanted us back.
Is that an offer?
No, it's a question. I'd like the truth, please. Do you want us back?
Frequently, but not permanently. Do you want to come back?
No.
Well, we've cleared that out, then. I think we're going to get on very well from this time forth, don't you?
Butley says a lot of the things that we would all like to say in our lives and in our circumstances and in our relationships, whether you like people or whether you don't, whether you, I mean, yes, he's unsympathetic in a sense. His attacks on his wife, but it is so eloquent, it is so witty, it is so outrageously funny that, and the relish you can have in saying this, it gives him a sympathy, makes you identify with him or empathize with him. He's almost deliberately provocative. Well, he is deliberately provocative and disappointed in himself and in his... I think in the end that's what it amounts to. It's a disappointment, a highly intelligent person being somewhere disappointed, horribly disappointed in himself and in the life he finds himself living, that it becomes wicked and savage and incredibly funny. I mean, sometimes the audiences would respond with such laughter and such, because they enjoyed the outrageousness, they enjoyed the wickedness of it.
Jerry hasn't told you, then?
Told me what?
He's known for weeks. What's his name? Friend Reg must have told him.
Reg?
Tom told him. At least he told me he had.
Tom? Tom and Reg? What on earth have Tom and Reg got to do with us?
He's asked me to marry him.
Which one? You're not. You can't be.
Yes, I am. Do you mind?
Yes, yes, I mind very much. After all, a man is bound to be judged by his wife's husband.
And the play's excitement and impact perhaps comes from the fact that it all happens in one day, where everything that could go wrong with this man's life, quite apart from the fact that he actually engineers it all going wrong, he sort of makes it all go wrong. It does, in fact, all go wrong in one day. He loses everything. He loses all his relationships, his wife, his protege, his colleague, who he's thought of as, you know, treated with contempt, and suddenly she's had her book published, which is something that hasn't happened to him. And so does his ex-wife's partner. Everything that can go wrong with his life goes wrong in one day. And it's savage, cruel, and wildly funny.
What metaphor would you use when you learned that Joey was going to move in with someone else? Would that be divorce? Metaphorically.
What?
I'm sorry. I shouldn't do that. But I was thinking it must be odd getting news of 2 divorces in the same day.
Joey hasn't said anything.
No. I'm giving the news. You might say that when he comes to me, our Joey will be moving out of figurative speech into matters of fact. Ours will be too much like a marriage to be a metaphor.
I thought you didn't admit to being, what? Different?
Buckley comes on stage, and he doesn't leave the stage, and he does. Actually, he is the motor, the total motor, and the voice of the play, so that he is talking all the time. Very, well, as you've said, complex language in a way, but such language that you can really relish. I mean, this is what you want to be an actor for, to be able to say things and sort of express things and to be funny and to be sort of resonant at the same time, and say things that are about something and have, certainly in terms of relationships and of someone living a life. And all I can say is that it's hugely demanding, but that's the exhilaration of it. That's why, you know, you don't want to go on stage and just say 3 lines if you can help it. You want to say 300 if you can. I mean, I think that's what acting, what one does want to do. And if you're given the ability to do that, then that's what you try to do. And it's a huge adrenaline and excitement. It's to be able to express such a virtuoso part like that, and to identify with it enough to be able to really present it and make it work for an audience. I mean, that's what theatre is for the actor. I remember the success of it, sort of almost with every audience every night. The reviews, I don't know that they were all unanimous by any means. I don't think they were. But it had enough of them. It somehow had a huge impact and was the thing to see. I mean, it just caught on in the most wonderful way. People loved that language, they loved that character. And they loved to laugh, you know, and to be caught up in a serious account of somebody's life that is very funny.
I wouldn't be caught dead reading those books, and you know how it exhausts me to teach books I haven't read. Why didn't you oppose me?
It's your own fault. Your instructions were quite clear.
Haven't you heard of a subtext? Very fashionable now. In fact, I remember advising you to use the word twice in every paper when I was guiding you through your finals. But what's the matter, dear? You're looking a little peaky round the gills, wherever they are. Were you frightened a trifle? You needn't be. You played the toad to perfection.
Is there a subtext to that, or can I take it as straight abuse?
It's straight abuse. Can you take it?
No, not any longer.
Noel Coward came to see it, and he thought it was absolutely fabulous. I mean, he thought it was wonderful, and he asked me out to supper, and he said, you must have known at once that this was everything you wanted to do. And I said, well, yes, I said, I did know that. But I said, my agent at the time, she said to me, I've got a new play for you here, which I think you may not like. It's rather anti-woman. And he just stared at me and he said, I hope you told her to put on her brogues and go for a sharp walk.
I'm a one-woman man and I've had mine, thank God.
And then it's on Broadway and it has the same kind of success. And it was great.
Suppose she wants to marry again.
Oh, good God, who would want to marry her?
You did.
Oh, well, that was before she'd been through the mill.
I did get the Tony for that, and it was very exciting to get it. I wasn't in New York at the time. We were actually playing the same play in Los Angeles to an empty theatre when I heard I'd won it.
You generally have the taste to let me raise the subject of my ruined marriage.
I can't help wondering whether you miss it.
Only the sex and the violence. And these days, you can get those anywhere.
It's turned into a great problem, this business of screen and stage. And of course, there are different perspectives. You do have to take a different perspective when you're on stage to when you're on screen. And it's quite hard to sort of bring a performance into the camera that's been very outgoing and projected. But the basic characterization, you can't really change that. And you're constantly scared of going too far or of killing it by being too theatrical. And there may be, even if it is written theatrically, this is sometimes a problem even with a film script that hasn't even been a play. You get a larger-than-life character. It's very easy to be accused of going over the top, simply because you're being true to the character. Because the camera is so searching and intimate. He's terrific as a director because he has a great combination of being quite sure of himself, quite disciplined, and letting the actor free at the same time. It is unfortunately very rare that the actor must remain free. He must be able to express his instincts within whatever conception the director may have. Otherwise, you've just got deadness, or at least you can have quite a good execution of the play without any real fire or originality. And I mean, I don't know how he does it, because he's so precise and meticulous about a shape or of a scene, and yet you're free within it. Now, Lindsay Anderson had that ability to.
If you really don't want to lose her...
You know, your conversation's beginning to sound as if it's been stitched together with song titles from the 50s. Making a mistake about Anne, if you really don't want to lose her.
Then I'm trying to tell you something.
Hey, life and fallings. 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1.
What are you doing?
Hey, life and fallings. Could I speak to Mr. Nuttall, please? Mr. Reg Nuttall.
I told you he's not there.
Thank you. Waiting for Mr. Nuttall, thank you.
All right, I'll do it.
It was a witty performance. There's something... Richard has a wonderful... He doesn't work nearly enough at the moment. He's got a quality, a humorous quality, a naturally humorous quality in his seriousness, which was just... He was one of those actors who can convey that he's funny while being very, very serious, and which, of course, is a perfect foil for Butley, who just teases him mercilessly. And Joey can put up a fight, though. He can put up a fight. And the relationship is so teasing, so... I mean, Joey is Butley's protege. Joey is the... If there's going to be another great teacher, it'll be Joey, and Butley knows it. And And of course, the whole sort of thing about Joey having a gay relationship with someone called Reg Nuttall, which is a very divine name, is another thing for Butley to really go for him about, And Joey manages to hold his own against all this because he enjoys the fact that Butley is championing him as a scholar, and as a colleague. So there's this constant friction and frisson between them, which makes for a lot of the play, actually. A lot of the scenes of the play work between the two of them.
Leave it here with me, and I'll do my damnedest to have it read by, next week.
No. I'll read it aloud. 3 o'clock, then.
I've been really incredibly fortunate. I mean, I was, came along at a time when John Osborne, David Storey, Harold Pinter, and Simon Gray, variously, all asked me to be in plays of theirs. And I simply couldn't have had a more exciting people to work, people whose words to say. And people like, as I say, Ronald Eyre and Lindsay Anderson and Harold Pinter to direct them. Donald McQuinney. And I've done 11 pieces of work with Simon. I think 4 of David's stories. 2 or 3 of John Osborne's, or 4 or 5 of Harold Pinter's, Well, Lindsay sent me the script. I loved the script. I loved it because I felt it was, in many ways, a parallel to my own experience. I'm one of 3 brothers too, and my parents were fairly ordinary living, sweet people who just devoted themselves to their family, and who both could have been, actually, my father could have been a considerable cellist and my mother a considerable pianist. I mean, I've no doubt about that. But they didn't have either the opportunity or the final little bit of drive to make them go and do it. So they lived, an average life and bringing up 3 sons. And although the social parallels aren't the same, the fundamentals are the same. And I just loved that family that David Storey had written, possibly with a lot of his own experience in it, I suspect. The wife who always wants to live a grander life, a more refined life, a more well-mannered, courtly life, and who's actually living in a house of men who are having to struggle, one emotionally, neurotically, one professionally, and one is a kind of wild misfit, Andrew, this extrovert character who seems to dominate this play. And the father, who's a coal miner, a sort of man of huge heart and huge, big sort of compassionate sort of nature. A wonderful family setup, and utterly real, utterly truthful, harrowing in its honesty, and with great flights of fancy and humour, particularly from Andrew. And Lindsay Anderson offered me to play, and I think he offered me the younger son, which Brian Cox played. And I said, well, I think I've not actually been there, but I want to do something much, much more different. He said, well, choose. Which one of those brothers do you want to play? So I said, well, I'll choose. So I chose Andrew. And then, of course, having chosen a part, you then get rather scared to play it because you've asked for it. So you've got to prove yourself, you know. But Lindsay's genius as a director was quite... I would rehearse the first scene of this with a scene with his mother, where he's sort of teasing his mother, and very, very sort of mad scene, really, sort of. And I would rehearse it, and Lindsay would say, yes, fine, next scene. And I got increasingly more uncomfortable. And one day I just said, it's not fine. He said, oh, really? What's wrong with it? I said, well, it's not right. It's not free. It's not, I'm not... He said, no, it's perfectly all right. What are you worried about? This is great direction, you see. So I said, oh, good. Well, I began to think, well, obviously there's nothing wrong with it, you know. So I then got quite free with it. And then he started to direct it. He waited until I felt at ease before he started to direct it. If only that were always true. It's sort of common sense in a way, but it takes I suppose you've got to be fairly sensitive to understand that you'll get nowhere with an actor unless he's at ease. And he's there because he wants to be, not because he has to be drilled into something. He's there because he wants to be there. You're not made to do this job, you choose it. Anyway, Lindsay was terrific. And David's writing was just, he has a way just to touch the rawness of your soul. You know, you said you found the play very moving, and it is very moving. And because it suddenly will catch you unawares on a really raw spot. And it's, and move you. But he has it's just, you can't say, I don't think David and Simon could be more different in their way of writing. I mean, but David certainly can make you laugh as well. I mean, there's some wonderful humor in Celebration, some wonderful sort of relationship humor, you know, and he's got a sort of dark, quiet sense of humor which gets you as well. I really fell in love with that play because I identified with it so much from my own family experience, I think. Just being one, there was my mother, there was a house of men, you know. And in fact, that's one line from the father suddenly says to his sons, now, behave yourselves, you know. One woman in a house of men. Not easy for her.
She's had a hard life. She worked very hard. Kept this place like a palace. One woman in a house of men. She'd given anything to have had a daughter. You know, somebody to talk to.
The play is a very strong play because I think it made us feel like a family. And we never quite lost that. And when we came to the film, we still had that. Even 5 years later, we still had that sense of being able to move in together at once as a family of five. And the filming of that was very exciting because Lindsay was a very experienced filmmaker. And he'd spent his life in film. He was a disciple of John Ford. It was, you know, he'd done wonderful things before that. So he really turned that play with its marvelous raw realism into a wonderful piece of cinema.
Well, the trouble is, Mother, you see...
That's enough.
We had a little argument last night. After you'd gone to bed. One of the usual short domestic tourneys. Nothing to get excited about. You were probably too replenished to hear our little contretemps, but one or two people here, unless I'm very much mistaken, got very worked up indeed.
Oh, what was all that about then?
Oh, you'd be very interested to hear that. Politics.
Oh, I should have thought you'd have all been on the same side. What with your background and experience?
It's one of those great moments that happen, I suppose, in life for everybody where something more powerful than the thing you think is motivating you is actually working on you. Some hidden love for her, his mother, some awareness of her fragility, some, what he wants to say, what he wants to do is suddenly shriveled by something, a more powerful feeling which suddenly comes up in you, and you realize you can't actually say that because the damage would be too great. And the damage to yourself might be too great. Never mind what you might do to her, in this case, her.
I've always said we were a funny family.
Oh, I think we are. A family of comedians. Clowns. Excruciating tricks. And all for your amusement, Ma.
The drink's done him no harm at all.
No, the harm that I was done a very long time ago indeed.
Andy.
Do you remember when I used to cry outside that door, let me in, let me in?
Oh, now.
Why wasn't it ever opened? Why?
Andy.
Why wasn't it ever opened, Steve?
Andy.
Why wasn't it ever opened, Steve?
I don't think you can ever put your finger on what makes things suddenly go to a wider audience and other things not. It's timing, I don't know.
Shall we dance?
I'm thrilled, and I'm really find it upsetting that so much fine work that people do is not recorded, and that it isn't actually mandatory for every successful production, let's say, at the RSC or the National should be filmed. I mean, but seriously filmed, not just recorded from the back of the upper gallery. And I think we've lost, in the times when we've had the power to film them and the ability to film them properly, but it's not been done. And I think it's a terrible thing.
But it's good.
But it's good. I mean, the American Film Theatre has done that for, how many are there? 14. For 14 pieces of theatre work, has done that. And it's great that they're having another life now.